Hey, Broken Brainiacs, welcome back to the Broken Brain. Today is sort of a rerun and sort of not a rerun, sort of a new run. This is an episode of another podcast that I was on called TV Ate My Brain. I recorded this with Carly Beaumont, who is the founder of the Core Temp Arts network of podcasts, which, if you listen after the music at the end of each episode, you know that the Broken Brain is a proud member of that network. This is another show where different hosts cycled through. TV Ate My Brain is the name, and it gave people a chance to talk about different media and TV shows that meant something to them, that they wanted to pontificate about. So this was us a couple of years ago talking about Bluey, the Australian children's show. And you know Bluey, come on. In fact, there's a new episode. This is why I'm sharing the rerun. There's a new episode of Carly and I talking about the new episode of Bluey, The Sign, the penultimate episode of season 3, the first 28-minute as opposed to 7 or 8-minute episode. And if you're following the internet and you don't live in a cave, and especially if you've watched it, you know that this is a very emotionally impactful episode for any fans of Bluey and just really human beings with a heart. So I thought I would run this for you to give you a little intro to our first impressions of Bluey when we both first came across it. And then you get to hear our thoughts about The Sign later on this week. So enjoy this, and we'll be back again soon.
The Broken Brain.
Hey! It's TV Ate My Brain with Dwight and Carly. Today we're going to be discussing the wonderful Disney children's show that's really a show for the whole family. It's actually a show you should be watching, whether you have kids or not. You're going to enjoy it, and we'll tell you why. That's right, you've already guessed it. We're talking about the Australian children's show, Bluey. Available now on Disney+.
Does it record?
Yeah, because it has a record feature. That's what.
Nice.
So it's a backup.
Does it sound okay?
Do it. It's okay.
Better than Skype?
I think I like Skype better, actually. It's just more people use Zoom now. So
Right.
maybe we should use Skype next.
It's fine. That's fine.
Let's switch. That's just a little bit of, different recording endorsements for people. We should leave that on.
We should,
leave that
yeah,
on.
you should definitely. That's definitely how it should start. The beginning of a conversation about animated show.
We don't do a lot of kids shows on TV. Ate My Brain, do we?
No, we do not.
So is this the first?
Yes,
Maybe.
maybe. I mean, it depends what kind of parent you are and what kind of shows you let your kids watch. That's what I'm gonna say.
So Cthulhu Land or whatever that show was called. I don't remember if anyone was doing that one.
Land. Right. I think like Snowfall and Unreal isn't really a kid's show, but who knows?
Hey, but we're all kids.
Judge.
We're all kids at heart. So
hilarious.
This one's interesting for me because it's one of those kids shows, and this is one of those reasons I'm glad that we're both hosting together, because we all have kids, right?
Yes.
And so when you have kids, you really learn to appreciate the shows that you can watch with them and go,
Yes.
I'm not just, is it good for them? Because, that's, I guess, true.
Right.
But it's like you always say with parenting, what's in it for me? Right.
Yeah, that's how I parent.
And so you really, really value the ones that you can say, that one is one I can sit and watch and actually have a good time. So when the kids are like, hey, can we watch, whatever show, let's say Bluey, for example, since that's what we're talking about today. It's always good. So I was curious, you were a Bluey newbie.
Yes.
As they call it. I think that's the official on all the chat boards.
Yes, that's on the chat boards. That's what they're saying on TikTok.
There you go. So you went for TikTok. I was using an old person reference, the chat rooms. In the Yahoo chat rooms.
Whoa. Whoa.
The AOL chat rooms when
that takes me back.
I heard on a different podcast, not this one one that you and I are doing right now, obviously, but I heard on, I think it was the Omnibus or one of those shows where they kind of do deep dives into things. They talked about remember the AOL CDs that they would mail
Yes.
to you?
Are you kidding me? I love those.
They'd say 6 free hours of internet time, which
You were like,
is a
yes.
very old person thing to say.
Yeah, you were. I was a
But-
kid, and I couldn't wait to get those.
At a certain time, there were like, and I don't remember how many more, but it was maybe twice or 3 times as much of those CDs existed as there were human beings living in the United States.
Oh wow,
or something like that.
That's hilarious.
Had huge warehouses full of them.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So
Now
anyway.
they're just lining the sea. The bottom of the sea. Anyway,
that's a good movie. I hope they bring that into Marvel's Phase 4. When they bring Namor in coming
That's
up
it.
from the sea, it'll be
Right.
like that'll be
Made
a
out
big
of-
part.
made out of LOL CDs.
Those are all their
CD-ROMs.
weaponry, all their clothing,
Right.
everything will be made out of.
That's hilarious.
Man, get on that, Kevin Feige or whoever the guy in charge. Feige.
Fish. Is it fish though? No. Anyways,
I'm not
Bluey.
sure. Yeah, so as you can tell, we're talking about Bluey, which segues back from Marvel because it's owned by Disney, right? So you hadn't seen this. I gotten
At least in the US, I think.
my brother-in-law's kids like this show, and it was like, oh, you should check this show. One of the interesting things right away about it is that they're 8-minute episodes, right?
Yes,
Just about
that's
8 to 10
great.
minutes, and that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Bluey, the main, we'll get into who the characters are, but is 6, the main character, right?
Mhm.
And has a 4-year-old sister, and my youngest is 6, and so it's kind of perfect mentality wise.
Yes, my youngest is 6 too, but he was not interested in watching it with me.
Oh no,
No,
didn't
he
want to
was
do it.
like, "I'm gonna go watch YouTube." I was like, "Okay."
He's like, Mom, usually let me watch Lovecraft Country and all
Right.
the.
Right, that's exactly. He was like, "This is not like Lovecraft Country. I'm out."
He's like, hey, well, I know you need someone to co-host Shondaland, right? So
Right.
you got him watching all the Shonda Rhimes joints.
Yeah. It's funny because everyone who would walk into the room while I was watching the episodes, the surprised, like shocked, a little. I'm not gonna say disgust, but they were just kind of like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "You guys, it's a show. It's a show called Bluey. What? It's a cartoon." They're like, "Why?" I'm like, "Ugh, it's for work."
Your family had a different reaction than like mine.
Yeah. Everyone was like, "Why are you watching this?" Like, you guys, I watch a lot of different things. I'm like explaining myself and feeling really inadequate.
Like we need to process this part.
I need to process my emotions around this.
This part. Well, I have the Bluey creators right here on the line. Let's see how they feel about this. No, they didn't make it today. They declined mostly because I didn't invite them. But
Right.
well,
right.
I say mostly. That's probably not true. They probably. But there's probably other reasons that they wouldn't come if I did invite them. But well, it's so I mean the background is it is an animated show that it's about the healer family, which are so obviously blue healers because they're dogs, they're anthropomorphic dogs. And one of the right away, one of the things I thought was kind of interesting about the show is that they are both dogs and they inhabit a world where everybody's animals, right?
Yes.
At least I think they're all dogs, if I'm not mistaken.
I in the episodes that I see, I did not see another type of animal.
Yes. And the other time animals are still animals and the dogs are people, but they still have dog-like attributes.
Yes.
And
which I like.
Yes.
Because it goes with the rest of the show, which is kind of like, imagination and, you're working with your adult world and your kid world and you're mixing it into play. So I feel like it kind of goes with that world, with that, thing.
That was my thought too. One of the things I really like is that when the characters are happy, like the little girls are happy, their tails wag.
Yes.
Like, which is cute,
Yeah.
they're acting like little kids, but then they have these wagging tails when they get excited or happy.
Yeah.
And you've got dad, mom, and then Bluey and Bingo are the little kids, right?
Yes.
Who
are the cutest.
Family. Yes. And that's the thing. I feel like there's a couple of things that go into the cuteness. That's probably a good thing for us to highlight here and talk about the cuteness factor. Basically, what you have these little 8-minute segments where the family, what my take on it, if I was to describe it, would be that they have very on one hand, kind of normal life experiences, but the thing that makes it kind of interesting and also funny, that's the other part, is the funny, is that they use play and imagination very heavily. Like, this is a family that you could say, like, that's how they solve problems in a way, right?
Yes.
That's what they're going through. And
Yeah.
that's how they're learning things. And I feel like that's sort of, when I say that out loud, it sounds like something that's on every kid show is, we learn through imagination. But in this regard,
the motto for PBS.
yeah, we can have adventures in books with our imagination, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But there's something different about this one in that there's something active about the play that they're doing that is actually playing through things, which reminds me in a way of kind of like play-based education or play therapy that they do with little kids.
Okay.
Where it's like you let a kid play and they kind of are in charge of their environment. And the idea and what they find is kids will work through trauma, or they'll work through kind of things by being in charge. And sometimes you never really get, like, they don't tell you like, oh, I learned this from my play, but they'll start to feel better about things. And anyway, and one of our episodes was really that way. But
yeah, I mean, isn't that how up until 5, or like between 2 and 5, isn't that how kids kind of learn to socialize by playing and using their imagination and using a lot of the things that they see in the grown-up world?
Yeah,
it's right. Am I wrong?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you know, too. I mean, but that's what it definitely seems like. And a lot of times that's where kids will have a lot of fun imitating the adults around them.
Right.
And they do that. So let's get into, before we get into the episodes, let's talk a little bit about what we just said about the cute factor. For me, the first thing I noticed about it being cute and enjoyable and engaging is the aesthetic, like the art, the way that it's done with like the angles and I don't know, just the cuteness of the way that the animals move around in the world they're in.
And it's very bright and crisp. The animation is very crisp and it feels very simple, but I'm sure, you know, an animator or an artist would be like, that is not simple, lady. You know what I mean? But it seems very simple and pleasing to the eye. So I can imagine, you know, bright colors and all that stuff for kids.
Yeah.
So it's a very beautiful show to look at.
I feel like, that's one of the measures I think of good things like either art or dance or creativity, is when people look at it and they say, well, that seems like that would be easy to do, but it's actually very hard to make it look that good. Right.
Yeah. To make it look that easy. Yeah.
Right. It's like people always say that in comments when we podcast. They're always like, man, they make it sound easy. But then I tried and I failed. That they all say that in the review.
Wasn't as good as Dwight. Right. I hear that all the time. I don't know.
Just, you're saying, you shouldn't say that to yourself, Carly. That's not,
I mean, I tried my best.
Go easier.
Go easier on myself.
Man, I just hear like, if only we could be like Carly. That's what I see in all the posts, the posts on all the Facebook groups about podcasting.
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah.
Goes. You know, it's funny. When I was watching it, the one thing that stood out after, you know, all the visual stuff was how it made me feel. Right. And how it made me feel was like, I need to step it up as a parent. Like, I feel like I'm not doing this right anymore. You know what I mean? It made me feel very inadequate. And I don't know.
That's what they're going for. No,
I felt like that's what they were going for. I'm sure we could leave that for another type of podcast, but I just wanted to put it out there. Because the parents are, they're great. Like, I wanted them to be my parents.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thought too, is that it's a great example of parenting also, because you'll see how they relate to the kids. And also when it comes to imagination, they're all in.
They go hard. The episode where they had the magic xylophone, when they froze dad, like he was committing to his role. And I found that very commendable.
And I'll say this, it reminded me, and this is not something that I can always replicate, but in that one where, they have a magic xylophone, they hit this little thing and dad freezes, and he was like totally. And one thing I think it took me an episode or two when my daughter was watching this to realize is an important part of the mythology of the world, the storytelling, is that there is no real magic in this. It is imagination. So
yeah, that's the
if
magic.
this freezes dad freezes, dad is
Right.
choosing to freeze, right? So it's
Right.
important to, and so they'll sit and like spray him in the face with the hose and like, don't unfreeze him yet, because he's not going to move because he won't break the rules, right?
Right.
And it did remind me of something that when my older two were younger, if we would have a snowball fight, and everybody has had that experience where you have the snowball fight and you hit your kid in the face with a snowball,
Right.
accidentally or otherwise. And if they're under a certain age, they don't care for that.
Right.
Like when you grow up, you love getting hit in the face with a snowball.
Right.
Obviously.
It's
But
like my favorite.
but so I did this thing because if they got hit and they're like, ooh, and
Right.
you don't want them to cry, and that's why we go in from snowball fights if you can help it. And I thought of this thing where I was like, all right, you can throw one in my face,
Okay.
and they can't throw well when they're little, so you think that's safe. But so I would get down on my knees and put my arms behind my back and say, okay, I'm going to count to 10. You guys can throw as much snow as you want, and they'd be like, woo.
Yeah.
And I always felt kind of proud of that, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit of self-control you have to have for 10 seconds of snow getting flung in your face. And
Right.
so that's one time. So
Once.
as far as these guys are doing it every day on this show, I'm looking back 15 years ago and saying, once I did this.
Right. And it's crazy because then you can have kids like my daughter, who's now 10. And when she was like 3, my husband, was playing a little too rough, which was also a theme of one of the episodes in Bluey. And she did what she did. She said what she said. And it doesn't play that rough with her anymore. But she likes it. But still to this day, years later, the way she recounts it sounds like he was abused. Remember that one time Papi threw me against the wall? I was like, please don't say it like that, because that is technically that's what happened. But that's not what happened.
That's not what happened, right?
Or like threw me on the couch, and I'm just okay. So it's just like it doesn't matter what you do, however they recount it is different.
Yes, exactly.
Remember that one time Papi ripped my tooth out of my mouth? I was like, he was trying to help you.
Wait, no, that's not
right. Maybe my daughter's just very dramatic.
I remember when my middle child was young, and she said something to us about a kid in her class that was mean to her. And we were like, oh, what did they do? Oh, he just kept saying mean things. Like what? Oh, like stop that. And then you switch in your parenting head from, wait, no, what are you doing to this kid?
What were you doing? Right. He wouldn't stop crying around me. He didn't like it when I hit him in the face.
He didn't like that. He kept saying, stop it. Oh, so rude. But yeah. And so this really does give a little bit of insight into that. So there's actually the aesthetic of the voice acting as well as the way it looks and everything. I feel like it's very well cast.
It is.
It's set in Australia, which is especially fun. I assume it must be fun for Australians too, but for Americans, the accent thing is always fun, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, it's an Australian show, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. It is from Australia. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just kind of like, all right. So like parents in Australia are like super laid back because the dad is the most laid back I've ever seen. Either that or he's on some like really intense, pharmaceuticals or something.
I don't know the cannabis laws
over there, right?
Over there, but so call in. You have our phone lines are open. Anybody from Australia wants to call in?
Right, let us know.
While we're recording. Like? Andrew, he's a podcaster I know from there. That's the only one I could think of offhand.
That's it. Yeah. He's the only one. He's the only one in Australia.
Oh, I will say, yeah, with it being Australian, one of the things that is super fun is my 6-year-old now will go around the house saying like, oh, I need to do a wee.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, or like different expressions that you'll see there.
That's so cute. I like how the dad always calls. Well, I only saw it when Bingo would be like, Dad, and he would be like, yes, mate.
Yeah.
Yes, mate. And I was like, I'm totally calling my kids mate now.
Exactly. Yes. Either that or Squirt. Those were kind of his two go-tos. And
yeah.
I thought that was pretty fun.
And is he I take it to be that he's the stay-at-home parent?
It seems like he is home more often. Like he works from home, but they don't really get into what the parents do exactly, but they
No.
are doing something. Like he
Right.
does seem to have a job, and mom's not there all the time, so she
No,
might be
and
out
she's like,
working.
and she's always like leaving. Okay, you guys have fun, and she's like leaving in the car, and I'm like, oh, okay, so he's the one that either
So,
works from
yeah.
home or he's the one that stays home with them.
Yes. Yeah, I know that there is one of the episodes, and see, there's like 54 episodes, which is another nice thing for anybody who's like, if this is kind of fun to watch with your kid, you
Right.
don't like. Another show that my daughter likes is Gravity Falls
Mhm.
on Disney, which is a great show, and I love to watch that show with her too. But they made 2 seasons. There were short seasons, and so there's only so many that you can
Right.
just sit and watch until it's like, okay, let's go over it again, and
Right.
kind of thing. But this one, there's like 54 8-minute episodes, right?
Yeah.
So you got a lot to choose from. So there may be clues hidden in some of the others, but as far as what the parents do, but it is very much from a child's perspective. And when they're doing things, it's interesting how they make the things very high stakes. There's one episode, and it wasn't one of the ones we discussed, but my daughter was watching this the other day, and there's an episode where Bluey and her dad end up sitting on a park bench. Bluey's trying to learn to ride a bike, and she can't quite get it, and she's so frustrated she wants to give up. And so her dad is talking to her, and they look over, and there's her little sister trying to drink from a water fountain, and she can't.
Right.
She's not tall enough. And she's like, "Dad, we got to go help her." And he's like, "Well, let's see what she does." And then at the same time, like, their little cousin is trying to put on his backpack in the playground, and he can't.
Mhm.
And then I think their neighbor is doing the monkey bars and isn't quite tall enough to reach, and these other kids are whizzing past him, and so they're doing it. So they're watching these 3 things play out, and the dad's like, just wait a minute, let's see how they do. And they build up to like the so much frustration that these kids are and then they just give up, but then they like go back and try again, and the one figures out how to lay down and crawl into his backpack, and the other one learns how to, if I jump this way, and there's this triumphant music that starts
Right.
playing as they get closer and closer to accomplishing, and there's like this yay, kind of
Right.
feeling. And so it really is from that child perspective of, holy cow, I did it, I really
Yes.
did it.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's also there was the episode where they found a bird that was hurt.
Yes, that's
Or
one of the
something?
ones I wanted. Let's talk about that episode. It's called Copy or Copycat, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved that episode. Actually, I loved a lot of the
I
ones
told
that I
you,
watched.
yeah.
I know they were really great. No, but I really like that episode because they're like, her and her dad, Bluey and her dad are playing copycat. So she's saying everything that he's saying and doing.
Right.
And then they stop because they found this bird. They take the bird to the vet. The vet or person comes out and is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, the bird didn't make it." So it's like, grief and how to deal with that. And dad is just kind of like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. It's just the way life is, right?
Yeah.
Because another thing I like about the show is that, like, the moral kind of like lessons that they're learning isn't so much hitting them over the head and us and whom, the audience. as much.
Exactly. It wasn't, because sometimes those things can be very heavy handed. And
Right.
that little part where they're driving back home and she says, "I don't want the bird to be dead. Are you sure
Right.
it's not going to be okay?" And he just basically says, "Yes, that
Yeah.
is sad, but we can't do anything now." And that's all.
Right.
Because
That's
what
it.
do you say? And
Yeah.
there's not like, yeah. Anyway, go ahead though, because I love where they go with it.
No, but then what I loved about the show is that she proceeded to do the same thing with playing with her little sister, I believe, or her mom
Yeah.
or something like that. And then she's like, it was like her little sister, there was something wrong, pretend something's wrong. I'm
She
going to take you
pretends
to the
she's
vet.
a bird. She
Right.
plays out the whole scenario, right?
The whole thing. And then her mom is the vet. And then when her mom comes out, all right, she's going to be totally fine. And she's like, no, mom, no, that's not the way it had to end. It had to end like she's not fine.
Yeah.
So then she was like, and her mom adjusted. Oh, okay, fine. All right. I'm sorry. She's not gonna make it, whatever. And she goes through this whole process that she just, went through with her dad in her imaginative play. And she wanted to end the same way. So I was surprised by that the show
Yeah.
wasn't changing it just for her comfort or whatever.
It's exactly.
Which
it's
is to me,
exactly.
which was, I think, the most surprising part.
And
about the entire thing.
and kind of a bold sort of choice, right? To
Mhm.
say, we're going to show this child not just making it okay through play,
Right.
which you could get away with. I mean, you could easily just say, oh, this is how she played and she made it happier and
Right.
whatever. But she
Right.
actually, no, she wanted to replay and almost like process those
Process.
emotions.
Right. Process her
Yeah.
feelings and emotions through it. And then the best part of the episode is when she's like sitting with her mom and her mom is like, I don't know, chopping it up with her. And then her dad comes in. She's like, oh my God, Dad, guess what? I'm not copying you anymore. I stopped doing it. I totally forgot that I was doing that, where she just did this entire play copying what her dad did earlier that day. It was so
That's
wonderful. And
interesting.
I just, the way the paces, the steps that that episode took, I thought were just lovely all around.
Yeah.
And really, again, not so in your face, not so, soapboxy or like hitting you over the face, all these things that you're just kind of like, okay, which even some of the great children's shows still kind of do. This one I found did not do it as well, or did not do it pretty much at all.
And you think about making like a lot of use of 8 minutes of storytelling, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like rushed either. So it's not rushed or forced, which is really cool. And I totally agree with you. There's a real subtlety to that. And one of the things that might be strong about it is, even though, I mean, you have that line, like when she says, you're gonna be okay, or they give a hug, or the dad says, well, it's out of our hands now, but that's it. They don't actually have like well, here's how you can go on. It's just like, no, we just are. It's just life and we just go,
Yeah.
So there's that subtlety you're talking about, which I think is healing. And the fact that she's given the space to play that out. Right. And there's, because one of the things that I think even in real life, sometimes we try to force those things because fundamentally it's hard to kind of trust a little kid and say, you'll get through this. It's like, no, I'm gonna force you through this.
Right. You're not
sure you don't suffer.
Right. You're not behaving the way you're supposed to be right now. Right. Another great example of that, you know why? Because life is that way. There isn't a button at the end of, 30 minutes when something happens in your life where, everything comes together and everyone's happy and you hug it out, right? Yeah. It's not an episode of Full House or something like that. And that's great. Another example that Bluey has was the episode where I believe it's called The Claw, and the little girls, the dad is pretending to be one of those claw machines. Yeah. And the little girls are just kind of like, they're putting in they want to play. And the dad, as the claw machine, is like, no, we need more coins. And the mom is just kind of like, well, I'll give you 20 cents if you go make mom and dad's bed. So then they go do that. And then they get the 20 cents. And then they get the little, stuffed dolphin that Bingo wanted. So then after that, there's like, oh, wait, there's a special bonus, is a block that says you can have unlimited ice cream after dinner. And Bluey's like, oh my God, okay, Bingo, just give me the thing. Let's just play for it. Don't worry. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? I just need to get that block and then I'll win your other thing back. And then they go and she goes for the block and the machine is like, nope, sorry, it's too heavy. You lost everything.
And it's just the dad like, deciding no, like, I'm not going to give that to you. Yeah.
Right. Because he's trying to teach them a lesson. And at the end of the day, I don't know, they don't get it at all. And at the end of the day, they still get ice cream. And the mom who's sitting by kind of seeing this all play out, knowing that it's not going to turn out the way he wants it to, which I found hilarious.
Yes. The best line in that one, I think, is when he sends them and they're like watering plants and just dumping water on the floor and they're trying to dust things and breaking things. Yes. And he's like, this is great. We're getting the house clean and they're learning a lesson. And the mom's like, yeah, neither of those things.
Neither of those things are happening. That is the best line. You're right. But the best part was like at the end, literally the end of the episode is them at dinner and they're eating ice cream. And Bluey's like, oh, can I have more? And the dad is like, yeah, okay. And he's like scooping a bowl of ice cream. And the mom is like, okay, so what did we learn? Or did we learn anything today? And both girls are like, nope, nothing. We didn't learn anything.
Exactly.
And that's it. That's the end of the episode.
That's the end, right?
And I love that because that's the way life is.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that's super fun about it. And so it's like they are teaching something though it's like that, what we said earlier, right? Is like make it look easy.
Yes.
It's like, oh, it's just a story we're just telling. It's like, oh, but they're actually building some stuff into it that's really, I think, really interesting.
They are.
Yeah.
No, but when you said that it's from a child's perspective, I think for me that's a good example of that. Because usually when things like that happen, the kid is like, whatever, I didn't even learn anything. But that is something that later on, when they're doing something else that kind of relates to what they were doing with their dad, it'll come back to them, and that lesson is there. They just don't realize it that they learned it.
It's
And
really
I
cool.
just
And the amount that they do themselves, that they work through themselves. One of the episodes that I really like is the one called Grannies, and
oh
where the two girls
yes.
decide that they're going to play grannies, which is them
Yeah.
playing old ladies. And one of the things that's really funny, and this kind of permeates through a lot of things, is they have them play out being like old, and they come to the kitchen and they pretend it's a store, and the
Mhm.
mom's just like, oh no. And the
I
other
know.
thing I think is funny is that they decide to call each other Rita and Janet. So they'll
Oh
be
my
like,
God.
did we go to the store, Rita? And
Come here. And then the
they'll-
mom knows that. So she's just kind of like, Janet, no, Janet,
Janet, no.
don't, no, you're going the wrong way, Janet, because they
and
can't see.
the way
Oh,
the way
man.
that they play being old is very funny. Like they get
Mhm.
in their car and they just drive over all the toys and the yard
Right.
gnomes and
Right.
pretend they can't see them, and then they shoplift. I think that, which is another thing, there's like
Right.
kind of a stereotypical old white ladies going to store, but and so anyway, some of the things that they choose to play while they're doing it. But the recurring little thing in there that I think is very interesting, and once again, the kids really play it out mostly,
Mhm.
is that Bingo keeps floss dancing. She keeps doing that
Yes.
little floss dance, and Bluey will be like, "You're breaking the rules. You're supposed to be an old granny. They don't do that." And she's like, "I bet they do." And they call their grandma and their grandpa, and they don't know how to do the dance.
No.
And
They're
then
like, I'm going to
Bluey,
put my hands up. No, grandma, that's
exactly,
not how
and
you
they
do it.
just and then they Bluey is like, oh yeah, I was right. And then Bingo gets all sad and she's like, I don't want to play anymore. And then
Yeah.
then Bluey's mad. And this is a great realistic looking conflict to where it's like, I was right and you got mad at me for being right. That's not fair. Now I'm mad at you.
Right.
And the great thing is the big teaching moment, if you want to call it that, really happens with what Bluey does, because this whole episode they're coming in and basically interfering with mom and dad doing chores around the house, right?
Right.
And when she comes in and they're getting the bed ready, she's like, I don't understand. All this happened. And the dad's like, I don't understand either. I don't know what you're doing, what you're talking about.
Right.
And I don't know that the mom really understands what she's talking about either, but she says to her, do you want to be right or do you want to play?
Right.
Which on the one hand is a great thing to tell a kid, very wise. On the other hand is kind of one of those things you say when you're like, look, would you guys just go figure this out? Just
Right.
Is there a way and I don't have
Yeah.
to get involved and you can just go play?
But I think it's a more productive way of saying that.
Exactly.
Because like
Yeah.
you could just be like, could you guys either play or don't play together? I don't even care what you do right now. Or you could just be like, look, you want to be right or you want to play with your sister?
Yeah.
And then I think that prompts Bluey to then figure it out herself without her
Exactly.
mom giving her the answer. Yeah.
And the thing that I thought, and this reminded me when you were talking about how they decided to go the slightly harder route, which is, I want to pretend that the bird died so I can reenact that feeling.
Right.
Right. So what they do in this one, she doesn't go back to her sister and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter. You just go ahead and pretend to do this thing, which would be
Right.
a fine resolution because you
Yeah.
want to be right or do you want to be happy? Right.
Right.
But what she does is she's like, well, I'm not going to say that she can floss dance because that's not true, but I can make it true by teaching my grandma and grandpa how to floss. And then, and I'll tell you, I even like just talking about it. Pretty much any television show or movie, it makes me cry. But when I think about like, there's that moment she comes up to her and shows her on the little iPad. She's like, look, grandma and grandpa are flossing. And she's just, and Bingo says like, I knew they could. And then she says, thanks, Bluey. Because she knows, right? She knows that she made this happen.
Yeah.
And so she makes it true to make her sister happy. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a sweet little thing. And so I find that even, I think it's a good measure of when you can have a scenario where there's like a family of anthropomorphic Australian dogs. The two kids are playing that they're old ladies wrecking havoc on the community and then still make me cry in that scenario. Right.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yeah. I loved it. I really did. I love also what I love just on a purely entertainment level what I loved about that episode was them pretending to be the old ladies. I thought that was just like
That was
gold.
yes.
That was incredible.
And
Like,
the
it was really
mannerisms
great.
and the
yes. And the little voices and the the shawls over their head. Like the entire thing was hilarious and just like really cute, but just
Yeah.
really funny.
when they run over their dad with the laundry when they're in their little car, knock him over and
Right.
did you hear something, love? No.
No.
Crash the car. Yeah.
It's really fantastic. I think out of all of them, the one that felt more like a an after school special, if you will, was, I believe it was yoga ball, yoga ball, the one where Bingo. By the way, Bingo's my favorite character. She's 4.
Yes.
She's adorable. She's very emotional. I love her. But no, her dad is playing with the both of them as he does. And there's several things that he does to Bluey, who's 6, and that he also does to Bingo, who's 4, but Bingo is smaller, so it feels rougher to her. It's rougher for her.
Yeah.
And the entire episode, I'm just kind of like, what's wrong with her? Like, is she freaking out about something, X? And it turns out she talks to her mom later because one of those their dog moments was like she's not feeling well and she goes to cry, but she goes and like lays like a dog under a bench. And I was just like, that's so cute. I forgot they were dogs, right? And her mom is like, hey, Bingo, what's going on? And she's like, Dad is a little rough with me. And her mom is like, well, did you use your big girl bark? And she's like, no, because my big girl bark is not that great and all that stuff. So her mom kind of goes through it with her and she finds her like big girl bark, which is like a, and it's really cute.
Right.
And then she's like, okay, so now let's go tell Dad. And, the mom goes and it supports her, but she's the one, Bingo's the one that goes and tells her dad. So with her mom's support and with everyone in the family there present, her dad kind of comes to her level. And when she's telling him and he's just kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize, since your sister's older, I didn't realize that that it was hurting you. I'll try my best. So now let's see, is this, if I do this, is this too much? And she's like, no. Is this too much? And she's like, no. She was like, this too much? And she's like, yes. And or she does like her little bark. And I just thought that was one of my favorite episodes, but that was also the most like after school specially feeling. Yeah. But I liked it because it was about if you're feeling uncomfortable in this situation, whether it's your dad or somebody else, you have to speak up because, X, Y, and Z, whatever
great
comes from
because
that.
they're
Great.
empowering her, right? Teaching her, right? To say,
absolutely,
here's how you communicate. I think,
but it was also, I'm sorry, but what I also liked about it is that her mom was there supporting her. It wasn't like her mom fighting her battles as you would, see in general.
Exactly. I think that's huge because you get that feeling that they just are kind of rolling with it of like, oh, well, let's go talk, and here's where we talk and here's how we talk. And I liked the dad's response also because he's just like, oh, I'm sorry. And here, let's work on it. You know what I mean? Which is, once again, there's this great example. One of the things that I think is a cool example with the whole thing is the way in which they play. A lot of times you can tell that these are kind of like recurring games, right? Where they say, like when they tell him, we want to play that game where you roll the yoga ball down the hall and you play that, you make that music and we have to run from the huge boulder. And he's like, oh, that's called Raiders.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's something that he showed them from like Raiders of the Ark or something.
Right.
But, and so they have this kind of recurring play, but, and the Grannies is a good example of that, as well as many of the others, to where you can see. And I think that when you do play with kids, they do engage somewhat in like complex play that we don't give them credit for, that kind of the little world building they do.
Right.
There's one where they decide, she and her friends decide that they have to stay within the shadows at this family picnic, and that they're trying to get back to the area where all the adults are, but the sun has moved. Right. And so they're kind of like trying to navigate through this, where are the shadows? And then, so there's just things like that seem, and once again, they don't demean the importance of it. It's like, no, we do need to stay in the shadows. How are we going to do it? And so it does show from that child perspective. Kind of
absolutely. The child perspective is great. The doctor, I believe the name of the episode was, had something that they kept doing that I was like, that's something that they've heard a grown-up say, which is like someone would the patient would come in and be like to the to the receptionist, which was Bluey, and the doctor was Bingo, and their friends, one of them came in and was like, oh, I ate a hippopotamus, and now every time I burp, I keep burping up baby hippopotamus. And they would go, well, that sounds like a pickle. And then they would take it back. And somebody would come in, oh, an alligator bit my head. And they were like, well, that's a pickle. So I was like, it's so funny because kids do that.
Yes.
They would just play and then, say something that they heard their mom say or the doctor say or the, grocer say or whatever. And I like those little details about, like you said, imaginative play, like, because that happens. Kids definitely do that. And it feels very true to life that way. On the other hand, though, I also found that as a parent, I found it very relatable. And specifically, I think it may have given me a form of PTSD, the takeout episode.
Oh, I was just going to mention the takeaway or takeout. Yeah.
Takeout or takeaway. Yeah. Takeaway over there. Yeah. It was so stressful, but it felt so real. It's just, they order from a restaurant, they go pick up the food. The dad comes out with the two of them and he's like, oh man, I ordered some extra spring rolls or whatever. So now they're outside waiting for the spring rolls to be done. And in this little time, which is like, I think he says 5 minutes, the length of an episode of so-and-so, it was 5 minutes. Everything went wrong. In the same way that it does when you have really small kids, especially that close in age. It was like they had to go wee, and then this one was thirsty, and then this one, was hungry. And then everything just kind of snowballed into this chaotic scene. And I felt I felt for him. And at the same time, I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore. This is not making me feel good because this is taking me back to those moments.
Panic attacks. Yeah.
I was having a straight up panic attack. But no, but I found that very relatable. That chaotic, that chaos of having small children and, having to cater to both of them, or, to all of them in very different ways because they need or want or whatever, very different things at the same time. That moment, I thought that episode showcased it really well.
And I think that's one of the strengths too, is that even though they typically, it's only 8 minutes, they have to show them making the right choice within 8 minutes.
Right.
But they do showcase that the kids are annoying sometimes, quite often actually.
As kids are.
And that the parents, because they'll react and they're all in, but they'll go, oh, you want to, oh no, not that. Do we have to play that? Or one episode where the dad says, can't we play some game where I lie down in the soft bed? And so there's these little moments where you can tell that they're like, okay, I'm all in, but
God.
Yeah.
Right.
And the takeaway episode is, I had the same reaction, which is just like, because we've got the one peeing over here in a bush because there's no toilets anywhere.
Right.
And so, and then you've got the thing I remember too with that is that Bluey keeps asking, hey, there's this little tap what here. Can I shower in here? Can I get all wet? And he's like, no, you are not getting in the car if you're all wet. And one of the things that I think ties in also, and oftentimes I think more often as a parent, it's a gradual realization and it's not always in the moment, but they get the fortune cookie, and the fortune cookie has a little thing that says that you never get a chance to be young again.
Right.
And the dad is like, you know what? You should take a shower in the tap.
Right.
Yeah. And I think as parents, we do have those times where we'll realize, like, what was I really mad at? I was mad at them being a kid.
Right.
Oftentimes we realize it later and maybe try to make it up different ways. But I know that realization. Like, I know that panic you're talking about too. Right. We all know that if there's those times where it's like, this is so overwhelming. Everybody just shut up.
Right.
And then there's the times where we're like, oh, they're just being a kid too. And they encapsulated that quite well in what I felt was pretty realistic. Actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, 8 minutes. Those filmmakers or creators or whatever that are just kind of like, I don't know, I can't do anything unless it's 2 hours or 90 minutes.
4 hour. Yeah.
Right.
The Snyder cut of Bluey is quite long. Right. That's what I hear.
That takeout episode was really intense in the Snyder cut. Yeah.
It's like, you didn't get it. What I was trying to do.
Your mother's name is Martha.
That was my Zack Snyder impression. Apparently he sounds a lot like Batman.
Oh, that's funny. But the episodes, I like it because it's 8 minute episodes. However, if you look at I don't know, if you look at a 20-something minute of like Bubble Guppies or, Monster Machines or whatever, they have these segments within a longer episode. So that's the way I think Bluey was just kind of like, we're just going to make each segment 8 minutes and we're
and
good.
make
And
them
it's
each their
perfect
thing.
for a kid. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you can see, I think the successful kind of shows do the same thing. They just oftentimes will have ABC plots, right?
Right.
If you will, like even the modern DuckTales and things like that.
Right.
But they just kind of cut them up into these sharp chunks, which is perfect if the age group you're looking for is really the age that Bluey and Bingo are.
Right.
It's palatable, and it's also meaningful though too, because I feel like kids shows sometimes err one side or the other. They're either too old for the kid they're trying to make it for,
Right.
or they are too just dumb.
Right.
And there honestly there are some materials out there that, and a lot of them are just kind of the YouTube video kind of one-off things of just like, oh, plant your kid in front of this, they're too stupid to care if it sucks. And this one shows, I think, a lot more respect for kids.
Yeah.
That they're able to.
I don't know about you, Dwight, but I feel that way about shows for kids, for children now, and not necessarily when we were growing up. I think when I when my kids were younger and they would watch shows like this one, I used to always say, wow, these shows are so educational, but also like really entertaining or really good. The Bubble Guppies, Peg Plus Cat,
Exactly.
anything
I
on like
love
Nick
Peg
Jr.
Plus Cat. Yeah.
Oh, Peg Plus Cat was the best. Or like Umi Zumi or things like that. Henry Huggle Monster, those shows that are really educational, funny, entertaining. I would sit there for hours not minding. When I was a kid, I didn't feel that way about the shows. And now even looking back, I'm like, wow, these were terrible.
They were. Sometimes I find I try to even explain the plot lines or the themes of Saturday morning cartoons to my kids, even the ones that are teenagers now, and they're like, yeah, that never happened. Come on. How could that be real? And I'm like, no, look, it's on YouTube. And they're like, oh my gosh.
Dad.
Yeah, no, and I think there was a real gap in that too, where I remember when we were young, we just didn't have any of those things that were. I just think they are better now, like you're saying.
I think you know what it is. I really do believe that now we are treating children as if they had a brain and they were intelligent.
Yes.
Whereas maybe when I was growing up, it was just kind of like, just plop them in front of the TV. And like you said, they don't
exactly.
care
and I think we get that bad rap now a little bit just because there's so many devices and you got to be careful. But on the other hand, it's like, but a lot of the things they're doing, if my 6-year-old gets a hold of the iPad, one of the things she wants to do, I mean, she wants to watch silly things too, but one of the things she wants to do is play like PBS Kids games, which are all math and spatial relations.
Right. Exactly.
So, So I'm more justified in letting her do it all the time.
Screen time.
No, this is the surprising pro screen time bent that we're taking at the end.
Right.
Well, so anybody out there, I would recommend get on your Disney Plus, and even if you don't have kids, I know some people who don't even have kids that love this show. That get on there, and it's worth 8 minutes of your time, but you'll find that it then becomes 16 and 32 and 64 minutes of your time. These are 8 minutes. I'm exponentially growing. I didn't figure out what it is with 54, but we'll tune in next time for what 8 times 54 is.
But it's fun. It's actually really fun.
It's really good.
Great. Yeah, it's
really
great.
Good.
And if your kids are not jerks like mine, they'll watch it with you.
I still believe in your kids. I bet you can get them to watch it.
Ground them. I wish you could have heard the why are you watching this? I was like, you guys need to leave me alone.
Say no screen time until you watch all 54 episodes of Bluey.
Bluey, right. Let me learn how to be a good parent. Get out of here.
Do your big girl bark.
Right. My daughter does not need that lesson, I'll tell you that much. Thank you for listening to the Court Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court Arts shows, visit courtemparts.com.